Future Hacker. Life. Path. Future.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Future Hacker. I'm your host, Maria Taiji, and our guest today is a philosopher, pedagogue, and accomplished author with 11 published titles on the topic of bullying, cyberbullying, and human rights. We are talking to Benjamin Horta. He's a specialist in bullying prevention, having received training from the renowned Owens Bullying Prevention Program at Clemson University in South Carolina, USA. Additionally, he holds expertise in restorative practices from the International Institute for Restorative Practices in Philosophy and Human Rights from PUC Paraná. For the past decade, he has specially dedicated himself to the cause of bullying prevention, firmly believing that it has the power to transform schools into safe, welcoming, and inclusive environments. His remarkable work was recognized by the United Nations in 2019, earning him an award in connection with the Sustainable Development Goals 4 and 16. Hi, Benjamin. It's amazing to have you with us today. How are you doing?
Hello, Maria. It's amazing to be here as well. Thanks for inviting me. And yeah, I think it's going to be a great time to talk about bullying prevention and many other subjects that are related to education.
Super important topics, and also a great timing to be talking about that here in Brazil as well, right, Benjamin? But, let's start by the beginning. So could you please share with us your journey and what events in your life led you to pursue this particular path?
Well, that is an interesting question. I have two main events that happened in my life and that really connected me to the bullying behavior. It's not bullying prevention, but before bullying behavior. And then I came to, understand a little bit more about the bullying prevention. But the first event was when I was a teenager and I was bullied myself. So I went through bullying for 2 years in this specific school that I was studying. And but back then, I'm not going to say how long, but back then, bullying was not a hot topic in Brazil. So I didn't really feel helped or nobody really did anything to help me. And I mean, the teachers and nobody there could do something because they thought it was actually part of their culture. So, and then many years later, I became a teacher, and then I went to England, and then I worked there for 4 years, doing 4 years, and then I was working with teenagers there, children and teenagers, and then they came to me talking about bullying and the bullying that they're facing. So I thought, oh, well, I have faced the same problem. So maybe we could connect and we could talk about it and we could try to find solutions that can help you guys and can help more people. But the more I spoke to them, the more I realized how serious it is and how it could damage their mental health and their body health. So I decided to really dedicate myself to this cause, which is bullying prevention. So
that's so interesting, how the path of our lives, right? I was myself also, let's say, I wouldn't use the word victim because, it seems that it's not as tough as what some children goes through today. But I did go through also being bullied at school, and I was lucky to have a brother, and my older brother, with 1 meter and 90, so really, really, really tall, really big, and so he could reinforce a message to protect myself. So I was lucky enough for that.
Yeah, that is a good way to stop bullying. Have a brother like which is 190,
right? Yeah. But still, I think that an interesting way to begin our conversation, and you're kind of drawing this scenario because as you mentioned, when you were younger, we didn't really have this concept, and people thought that it was part of growing up and part of the culture, and this has changed over time. So let's cover that. How has this concept of bullying evolved? It's a new word, let's say, if we think about how it was when we were children and with our parents and grandparents, how has it evolved over the past decades, and what societal and cultural changes have contributed to this evolution? And linking to that, how has the approach to parenting changed as well, moving towards a more human-centered approach as we are seeing today? We have new concepts of parenting and people choosing different paths when compared to the way that we saw before of being more this authoritarian approach to being a parent. And what do you think are the reasons for this increased importance that we're placing today over bullying today, right?
Yes. The first thing is that bullying is a new word for an old behavior. So if you check books, there are the Madame Bovary, for example. There's a bullying situation. It's a really, really old book, and there's a bullying situation there. If you read the Bible, there's bullying situation there. So bullying is an old behavior. But around the 70s, a psychologist called Dr. Dan Ovales, he was the one that really dedicated himself to discovering, to study this behavior. And it happened due to the high levels of suicide that was happening in his country. Yeah. So he's from Norway. So in Norway, there were many teenagers, especially, taking their own lives. And then he felt challenged to find out about it. And he focused on the main space where they spend most of the time, which is the school. So then he realized, and he found this, he came to this conclusion that there's this specific behavior that happens at school, and he named it mobbing, which comes from kind of a mob, kind of a gang. So before it was mobbing, and then he changed it into bullying, which was more, I think it was more relevant, a word that could fit better into the schools. So the word, actually this word has been around the English language since around 1800s. But yeah, since the bully, which means someone, that is the tough guy, and is the mean guy, and at school or something like that. It's been around for quite a long time in the English language. But then Dr. Dan Ovales took this word and brought it into psychology, into the academic word as a specific behavior. And since then, many, his work or the work of his team spread around Scandinavia and North America, United Kingdom, and other countries in Europe. And then people start realizing that this behavior, is not something that is is not natural. It's not something that is just part of their student life. That is a form of violence that happens at school and needs to be stopped. And so it evolved from this first early researches into some methods for prevention and some prevention programs and things like that, which is what I do now. But I think that people still get confused when they talk about bullying. I think especially in Brazil, because bullying is quite complex behavior, and people sometimes think it in a kind of a simplistic way, like, oh, it's just but there are many factors that help you to understand what actually bullying is. Bullying is not just someone fighting someone. There's a lot of things that goes around this bullying behavior, and a lot of factors and characteristics that you need to learn to then really understand the real concept of this behavior.
So, why do you think that we had, over time, this change in our own postures regarding bullying, right? So as much as we still have people saying, "Oh, he's just a bully," it's now on the focus, right? It's on the media. People are taking it more seriously. Schools are being more, they're being held more accountable for that, and nowadays, parents don't know how to behave. Somehow it got into the spotlight. So what before was considered something normal and that we have to live through that, now it's not that much. And do you see any changes on behavior, on societal behavior, or do you think that this is the way that we are evolving as parents ourselves, and listening more to the children and giving children more voice? What's your thought about that?
So there's a quote from Freud that says that everything that works towards culture, it works also against war. So we are a society that is constantly in evolution. And there are many things, not just about bullying behavior, but there are many things and many rights that in the past decades have been, people have been fighting for it. People realize that they have the rights. And if you think about the Human Rights Declaration, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it came right after the end of the Second World War. So there are events that people, as a society, learn about it, and as we start realizing that there's something that causes damage on that kind of behavior, we also need to react to that and also need to respond to that in a positive way to stop this kind of behavior. So there are many examples that could illustrate what I'm saying. So and bullying is one of these situations. It was something that was accepted before, that people used to think that is a rite of passage. People would be like, it's part of life. It's just, I'm stronger because I've been bullied. This is not really true. And so I think that it is related to the evolution of our society in general, and to realize and to look for new ways to improve our own lives and to improve the most sacred place in education, which is the schools. Yeah, so that's how I understand this timeline for bullying prevention.
Makes sense. And you also mentioned that people still get confused about the definition of bullying. So I think that is important before we move on in our conversation. So how do you define it?
Well, bullying is different from fighting, it's different from an argument, it's different from rough play. Sometimes you see students, doing rough play or things like that. Bullying is different from all of these kind of behaviors. Bullying happens when someone is repeatedly or constantly exposed to negative behavior from one or more different students. And this student that is being bullied, he or her is finding difficulty to react and to defend himself or herself. So there are 3 points here for us to understand bullying in a more wide perspective, which is, the first one, bullying is repetitive. It's not something that happens once and then stops. So the person who is bullying the other student, he's insisting in pursuing in that person to offend him, to expose that person to the second point, which is negative actions, which I mean they're not just playing around, they're not just having fun together. There's an intention from the bully to cause harm to the person who is being bullied. And the third point is the imbalance of power. The person who's being bullied is finding hard to defend himself or herself because maybe they are not strong enough physically, or not strong enough socially, or not strong enough psychologically. So this is the point. And the main point talking about this, when you talk about the imbalance of power, we need to realize that bullying is an act of injustice, because someone is taking the power he or she has and is using it against someone that is not as strong as enough. So that's why my main point when we work with schools is, in the long term, we're going to do many actions. We have many components in our program, as you heard at the school that we are working with, São Paulo. But the main point and the first step is to make sure that this person is find himself or herself safe, or feel safe and secure inside their school, because that's the place where they spend most of the time. So imagine you staying there for like 6 hours, 7 hours, and you're being, mistreated, and you'll be humiliated, and you'll be persecuted, and you'll be offended. Imagine that is a torture. That's kind of a torture,
Yeah, it's a torture. It affects your learning capacity, your social capacity. It has so many impacts, right? And as Benjamin mentioned, so the way that I got to meet him, I was lucky enough, is that he did this workshop at my daughter's school, and I was really impressed by the content. And for me, I learned that I had a lot of misconceptions about bullying, and I was like, I have to interview him, right? And then I just ran to him after he finished. And one of the things that I was impressed about is by your holistic approach to the issue of bullying, which encompasses not only the victim and the aggressor, which is what we usually focus on, right? But also the wider social and environmental factors at play. So could you elaborate on this approach and how it helps to address the issue more effectively?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, because the more we study about bullying, the more we understand how wide and how different sectors of even not just society school, but like many other sectors of society have an influence over bullying behavior. So, and that's one of the points that we spoke about, and I would like to address it today as well, answering your question. We have sometimes we have a very limited impression of bullying behavior. Actually, we have a very limited idea of violence in general. So the violence for us is that kind of violence generally that, we see on the news, that stands out, that involves physical or verbal violence. But really, when you're talking about bullying, one of the main problems of bullying is how it can be subtle, how it can happen under the surface. And sometimes, people don't even realize that that's happening. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is to not limit this way of seeing bullying that is focused only on the bully and the bullied student. Is limited, because if you think about it, imagine that there's a bullying situation happening inside of a classroom, right? There are students there, and there are like 25 students there, and there are 4 students. There is bullying 1 student. Everyone that is inside the classroom knows, and they have maybe direct influence or indirect different influence, but still we need to understand that the group involved in bullying situations is much bigger than what you think. So Dr. Denoveus, on his researches, he concluded that we have eight different groups, right? So those groups come from letter A until letter H, for example. So the first group is a group of the bullies, right? The students who bully the other student, and the point here is this pure bully, as you say, this pure bully is the one that start the bullying and take an active part on it. Okay, so he or she is the person who begins the bullying. Once the bullying begins, then we go to the followers. So the followers are the ones that really support the bully. So it's a little bit like, it's a really a group that is working together, you know, and the bully actually needs the followers to support him and to, you know, and to empower him. So after the followers, we have the supporters, and these supporters, they are the ones that they don't take a step, they don't participate directly, but they support the bullying, and they make sure that the people know that they support it. For example, they laugh. If something's happening, they take their phone out and they film it. So they are the audience, you know. They are the ones that are really like empowering as well the bully. Then we have the letter D, which is the D group, is the group that they support the bullying, they like the bullying, but they do not display an open support. Okay, so they like it, but they do not display an open support. They hide it, but somehow
it's what you call the passive supporters, right?
The passive supporters.
Yeah,
yes.
They're not showing it, but somehow they support that. Like, perfect. They're not. Okay, got it.
Yes, perfect. Yeah. Then we have the ones that are the disengaged onlookers. So these are the ones that they watch what happens, but they don't take a stand. They don't show, they don't approve, but they neither defend, disprove. Yes. So, which I think this group, they might be a group that is actually vulnerable as well to the bullying. Maybe they are like, oh, I don't want to get involved because I'll be bullied here as well. So
yeah, they're afraid if they're involved, they might get to be a victim as well, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
So we got the possible defenders. So these are very interesting group because they dislike the bullying. They think they should help, but they don't help. So they have a more their moral is better established, and they know that what's going on there is wrong, but they don't take a stand. Maybe because they are afraid of taking a stand and, you know, buying the problem. Maybe they don't know what to do, and that's why it's so important to teach them what to do. You know, okay, if you want to help, because when you say help someone, that's quite, you know, vague. But if you say help someone by including that person in your group, or helping someone by reporting the bullying to a counselor, or so we need to, when you teach them what to do, is more, we are sure that they can actually take a stand, and they will know what to do. And then we got the defenders, which they dislike the bullying and they help, or they try to help the bully student. Okay, and in the middle of all of it, we got the student who is bullied. So imagine. So when I think about this circle of bullying that by Dr. Denoveus, I realized that, and I want to take people to realize that more than just being exposed to the student who bullies that person. The student who is bullied is exposed to a lot of students, to a much wider group than you think. So imagine the level of harm and humiliation that the person goes through. And that's why we need to be really effective. And once we know that something is going on, if you're not sure if it's bullying or not, we need to take a stand straight away to move that person from this place of suffering to a place of belonging, to a place of welcoming, to a place of care. So when you think about this whole group, imagine this whole group is inside the classroom, right?
Yes.
Doesn't it make sense? Yeah. Because
and it also shows how important it is that how it's a collective effort to try to solve it, right? Because when you make it not about just the victim and just the bully, you're talking with other families and not only the families of those that are involved, and how important it is to solve. It's like a puzzle. You're talking about a bullying circle. You have a puzzle to solve, to understand which children are part of each group and how to empower the correct groups and how to move the pieces to try to solve this, right?
That's right. And the bully is someone that I always say that the bully is someone who needs help as well. So in a short term, we need to make an intervention to stop the student who's been bullied from suffering, right? But in a long term, we need to understand that we need to help and to address it properly, especially with the ones who bully other students, for them to understand where it's coming from. And that is really great, because throughout these 10 years that I've been doing it, I've been seeing really many students that they were actually the bullies, and they changed their behavior because they understood that there's where it was coming from. They understood the reason that, or maybe part of the reason that was moving them towards aggressiveness, towards the lack of empathy, towards the pleasure of seeing someone suffering. So changing that is really significant, because you can stop bullying not just from helping who suffers, but helping the ones who bully others to understand that how hard it is.
Yes. So let's cover that. Like, as a parent or maybe as a close relative of both the victim and the aggressor in this bullying situation. So what are some effective strategies for dealing with the issues?
What are some what? Sorry?
Like some strategies, of dealing with these issues.
For parents?
For parents, for relatives, and I've heard that many times from colleagues, from friends, that sometimes it feels that it's even worse of being a parent of the bully when compared to the parent of the victim. I'm sure it's bad, both cases, but what should we do?
Yeah, the first thing that I recommend is to make sure that they get as much support as they can at home. It sounds kind of obvious, but sometimes because we don't really understand the dimension of the problem, we tend to not really give the students the opportunity to really talk about it and to share about it. And sometimes they are afraid of talking about it because they think that the parents are going to go to the school and the problem is going to get worse and the bullies are going to get punished. And because they're going to get punished, they're going to get a revenge or something like that. So to talk to them and to make it safe, to make a safe place for this first conversation is really important. Second point is to get as much information as you can. If you understand that your son or your daughter is going through bullying, talk to them in a very welcoming way. Sometimes we also we need to be careful not to take quick conclusions, to take because sometimes you say, oh, but I bet you did something as well, right? Because they're pursuing, I don't know if you heard that before, but sometimes some parents can say, oh, I bet you did something like that. I know you don't, and probably they didn't. So making sure that they're welcomed, and then you get the information that you can, as much information as you can. For example, who is the person who is bullying, where it has happened, how many times it has happened, how it happened. It was verbal, it was physical, it was virtual, it was cyberbullying, yeah. So getting this information. And one question that I love to make to these students is, how we're gonna solve this problem together? How would you like? What suggestions do you have for us to work together on this? So, because they feel empowered. It's not just me taking a stand for them to protect them, but it's me being on the backup to help, to walk together and to teach them how we can find solutions together for this. So this is very restorative, because it's not just about saying what is wrong is what is right, but it's about giving the children the chance to share their expectations and how they would like to see this problem being solved. Once that happens, look for the school, straight away. Bring this information, talk to the counselors or to the principal, but bring all the information you can, talk to them, and make sure that you are going to follow the steps they're going to take. So ask them the steps they're going to take. Okay, so here's the problem. This happened, this, and this. What steps are you guys going to take? We're going to talk to that person. All right, group. When? Tomorrow. Okay, so the day after tomorrow, I'm going to ring you to see how you went and how the problem. So, we're dealing with a problem that is the solution takes some persistence, some resilience.
But in your experience, you've been talking to many schools. So in general, do you feel that the schools are already equipped for dealing with that? Because we see, cases coming into the media, and especially recently as well, that it ends in the media because the parents can't get the school to do anything about it. Like, you have the families going there and pressuring, and there's no results, and the case ended in the media, and then you see some action going on. For the most serious cases, of course, because, there's so many others that don't have visibility like that. So do you see schools actually getting equipped and prepared and trained for dealing with those situations? As you mentioned, both families, when you're at home, and the schools, they need to do something about it. For the families, if they should sometimes actually have to ask for help outside and go to shrinks and things like that. But schools need to go through training to be able to deal as well, right?
So yeah, the schools. But there are many schools. They are investing time, investing on the team, and on training. For example, this international school that I work with in São Paulo, we've been working together for 3 years already, and then we have a bullying prevention committee. We have a students committee. We have, so there are many materials and steps that have been taken to change the culture. And talking about this, I'm going to say something else that is related to this. We used to say whole school approach for bullying prevention, yeah? So we need a whole school approach. But now UNESCO and the Ministry of Education in France, they brought this new concept, which is whole education approach. It's quite limited only to the public that is around the school, that belongs to that school. For example, parents, students, the staff. But when you think about the whole education approach, this is a much bigger perspective, the much wider picture of how the society and many sectors of society can have influence on education, and that influence can be positive education or a negative education. So there are protective factors and there are risk factors inside the same society. So we are widening our work towards that, and relates to that, actually, UNESCO, they mentioned 9 points. Can I mention those points?
Yeah, sure.
These are connected to the 2030 goals. Yeah, to the 2030 agenda. So there are 9 main components for this whole education approach, and I would like to emphasize this here for people who are gonna watch, so they can know. For example, I'm connected to the point 3, so I can do this, or I'm connected to the. So how to deal with bullying? It's not just about a protocol that you follow for an intervention, but it's to anticipate to the problem, to take an action before the problem happens, and to change the culture. So the first one from the 9 components that UNESCO released recently is, the first one is a strong political leadership and robust legal and policy framework to address bullying, school violence, and violence against children in general. Okay, this is the first point, which is pretty cool. Second one, training and support for teachers addressing bullying, and student-centered and caring classroom management. See what we're talking about, training schools and stuff. Third one, curriculum learning and teaching to promote a caring school climate. So, bringing the theme into the curriculum, that is really important. The other one is safe psychological and physical school and classroom environment. The other one, reporting mechanisms for students affected by bullying together with support and referral services. And that's why we have the care box that we put in a school that students can report bullying incidents in that care box. And we have the app as well. In our work, we have an app that through the app, they can send a report to the school, straight to the school, and then asking for help. So that's a good way for them to connect to the school to ask for help. And there are a few ones, the involvement of all stakeholders in the school community, including parents. So getting the parents together, bringing the parents community together to talk about it and to be engaged, not just my son's going through this, but what can I do as a parent to help the school to prevent bullying. Student empowerment and participation, which is what we do as well when we establish a bully prevention student committee, and evidence monitoring of school bullying and evaluation of responses. But the last one means having data on bullying. And that's one thing that that we need to work on in Brazil, because, for example, UNESCO in 2019 released a report, and there are more than 100 countries that reported that they had consistent numbers to present in the worldwide, for this worldwide study, and Brazil was one of the countries that didn't have this data. So
I believe that.
Yeah, so and I was there when they were releasing it. I was actually there in Dublin when they were releasing it, and then I was feeling I actually felt embarrassed, because I thought, we need to do that, because there's a problem that we face in Brazil. And I heard the other day from someone from Russia saying, I can't believe you guys have bullying there because you have sunshine all the time. I was like, yeah, you're wrong. So anyway, these are the points. Unfortunately,
that's not the only cause of bullying, right?
Yeah.
So Listen, we were talking about, and you did a really great coverage regarding, who should be part of the solution and how we should engage and get connected, get together, and the school and the families and the whole environment. But one thing that I'm curious about, and you did mention, for example, that some parents, when talking to their kids, they said, "Oh, I bet you did something to have this reaction back to you." So what else should we not do? What are we doing wrong? Like, what are the things that we end up doing by incidents, and which actions or statements should we avoid doing in those situations that we think we might be helping, but we are actually doing the opposite?
First, minimize the problem. Sometimes, when a child falls and hurts his knee or her knee, and sometimes you say, "Oh, it's just a jump. It's just a jump. It's just a jump."
Everybody do that. I'm always angry with that. It's nothing. It's nothing.
You minimizing. You kind of minimizing their pain.
Yeah.
And sometimes we take this habit and then we carry on doing this towards their, for example, teenage years. And they're going through pain, and then we say, "Oh, it's nothing. It's gonna go." So again, don't ignore or don't minimize what they're saying. Okay. The other thing that I would like to say is, try to work on their self-esteem. Don't think that this is gonna happen naturally. Sometimes we make this mistake that we are, I say some compliments during the day and I think this is enough. We need more than that to build a good self-esteem. So work on building a positive self-esteem. And as I say, a positive self-esteem is a self-esteem that can recognize my qualities and can recognize, things that are not qualities as well. But I still deal with that in a positive way. Okay? And the other thing that we should not do is encourage solutions that involve the same acts that they've been exposed to. Like, for example, if you are being called by a specific word, I'll go there and call them that as well. Call him that as well, and use this kind of revenge strategy to try to find a solution for the problem.
Yeah.
And when you do that,
or the force, right?
Or the force, yeah. So don't encourage retaliation. Do not encourage retaliation. That's one of the things that I say. And let me think of something else. And be careful. Pay attention on the warning signs. Sometimes we ignore the warning signs. Sometimes you think, it's just part of the teenagers is just like that. And maybe it's not. Maybe he or she is going through a really painful time because of bullying, or even because of the teenage years, this season that they're going through. And then we tend to presume that the pain, we understand what the pain is, or so giving attention to the warning signs. Don't ignore the warning signs. If the student.
So wait, this is super important. What are some of the warning signs that we should be aware of?
Great question. Okay, any change on their ordinary behavior. For example, that's the first one. Oh, my son used to be really happy and really, he used to talk to anyone and he used to be really engaging with everyone. And then suddenly my son just shuts himself and don't want to talk to anyone anymore. right, there's something going on there. What's going on? It might be bullying, but it might not be. But we need to come and see what's happening, or being isolated, or maybe he or she are, showing some kind of sadness or even depressive behavior, or maybe there are some changes on the pattern of sleeping or their appetite. They're not sleeping well, or they're not eating well. They're avoiding go to the school. If you talk about going to the school, they're like, oh, I don't want to go today. I'm not feeling so well, and they do it quite constantly. Or maybe they even talk. They start. Some students, they start talking. They start saying bad things about themselves. Like they start saying, oh, if my hair was not like that, I wouldn't be bullied. Or if I was tall enough, I wouldn't be bullied. If I wasn't that tall, I wouldn't. They take the problem to themselves, and that is the main. One of the main problems in bullying is when someone who is bullied believes in the lies that the bullies are saying, because they're saying lies, and we need to make sure that our students, they're incredible, they're smart. If they don't know how to play football, that's all right. They're going to know how to play guitar. Or if they know how to play guitar, they're going to know something else. Or they're going to be good at math. But you need to celebrate these differences, You not just tolerate the differences, but celebrate the differences. So this is something that is really, that I think is really important to talk about as well.
Yeah. And, Benjamin, yes, you did. When thinking about all of that, and, the listeners even might be wondering, why Future Hacker is talking about this subject. So first of all, and if you've been following us for long enough, mental health is something that we always try to cover. And even when we talk about technology and innovation, we always have this human-centered approach, right? Not only just human-centered, even this interspecies approach, like with us, our mental health and how we are dealing with the environment and nature and making this positive impact. So when I was listening to Benjamin, his workshop, and I was just thinking about how it fits to talk about the future and human health, and it's the future of our children, it's the future of humanity, right? And how society is getting more complex with all innovations and with all technologies. So I can't imagine myself when I was young having to deal with social media, for instance, because what we had before, which was privacy, we would go home, we had our private lives, is completely different today with internet, with social media, and with the way that we are exposing ourselves. And we do expose ourselves, and our children expose themselves. Sometimes they don't have the education enough, they don't have information enough, and they don't understand the consequences of doing that. And I'm pretty sure that this impacts, when we're talking about bullying, the impact of technology, both positively and negatively, right? So I'd love if you could cover that as well, Benjamin, like the role of technology for good and for bad, and how has this been impacting bullying situations and the mental health of the youth today?
Yeah, well, I was talking to some parents the other day, and they're saying that the parents for this generation, they're facing challenges that parents from the generations before didn't face, and this is really related to technology. I think I love technology. I love the possibility of doing what we're doing right now, recording, talking online and stuff like that. But we really need to learn that technology is something that is not neither good or bad. I'm going to decide if it is going to be good or bad for me. I take the decision. And students, they are really, especially teenagers, they are really vulnerable to all this, to everything that was built for these platforms and for these apps. It actually was really built to get them, and it gets even us. Imagine them. So some researchers show, there are new researchers that show that teenagers and young people, they use their phones, their mobiles, or the smartphones for around 7 hours per day. Imagine that, 7 hours per day, and it doesn't include homework and things like that. It means that once in every 6 minutes they open the smartphones and they check Instagram or they check something like that, which is addictive. Instagram was built to be addictive. All those social medias were built for that. So what I think, and we need to talk about the culture of technology, and we need to talk about digital citizenship. We need to take this, and there are some schools and some corporations in the world and in Brazil, they are really taking a step about it. But talking about digital citizenship, I mean, how am I gonna use this amazing tool in a positive way? What kind of risks, because it's not just about buying a phone and giving to my son. It's about teaching him or teaching her how to use it. The risks that you have is monitoring it, and one of the main risk factors for cyberbullying and cybercrimes is that the lack of parents monitoring. And this is according to research from Dr. Hinduja and Samir Pachin. There are two researchers from Florida. So they research only on cyberbullying. So it's not invading their privacy, but it's really making sure they're safe on what they're using there, because technology is a huge door, wide open for bullying, for many wrong things, but also for positive things. So we need to learn how to use it in a positive way. Yeah, and cyberbullying, it really, I think the more I deal with bullying, the more I realize that cyberbullying is going to be the new hot topic that we have to fight strongly, because they are for this generation, they don't have online and offline anymore. It's just one line. It's just one. They're connected. They don't split it. Online and offline for them doesn't exist anymore. They are all the time online, and what happens online affects them offline. So prevention on cyberbullying is really important as well. For example, I'll give you some tips. Learning that follower is not a friend. That's one tip that I like. A follower. Oh, I have 5,000 followers. Wow, that's amazing. But we probably have 15 friends from all these 5,000. So don't consider them your friends just because then they come inbox and then they start talking something weird with them, and then this is one thing. The other thing is learning to be responsible for your own actions. And I speak that to parents very much. They need to understand that although there's a whole group from the classroom, 25 students talking about someone and bullying someone online, they respond for themselves and they don't have to be part of it. They can choose not to be part of it. So learning my personal responsibility online and also offline is something that is really important. So there are many things that we need to learn. There's a really long journey towards digital citizenship, which includes cyberbullying. So cyberbullying is a really little dot on this whole thing which is beautiful, called digital citizenship. So,
we're almost out of time, Benjamin, and it's been such an interesting conversation. I have two final questions for you. And so the first one, and it's still going to the topic of future naturally. You mentioned on this workshop that Generation Z and future generations may face this loneliness epidemic, and it felt so strong to me. So what are the factors contributing to this trend, and what steps can we take to address it and promote greater societal cohesion?
Brilliant. I think that one of the main factors is really technology. There's this documentary called The Age of Disconnection, something like that. A Era da Desconexão, or The Age of Disconnection. And they are really, the main point on this documentary is how technology is influencing the way we relate to each other, the way we hang out with each other, the way we leave our home to go to someone else's houses to hang out and to have a cup of tea and things like that. A cup of tea, that comes from England. So yeah. So technology is a really big aspect of the changes that is happening in the way people relate to each other. I think that one of the strategies that we need to use for that is to be intentional and to build situations that can bring people together. For example, they did on this documentary called A Era da Desconexão, they did this experiment which they had like a party, but they could not bring their phones to the party, and it was just an experiment. They just, okay, let's see what happens if people are going to come. And people that are living in the same building, this is in Europe, people that are living in the same building for years, they didn't know each other. They never had a chance to talk to each other, And so when they came to this kind of a party, people start really connecting, talking, and laughing, and then for a period of time, they forgot their phones, So I think that we put technology with what I'm saying. We value technology too much sometimes. We need sometimes to put our phones down and to look and to get some coffee with someone and listen what this person has to say, and it makes us feel good, makes us feel connected, makes us feel like we belong to a group of people, and to which internet cannot provide. I believe strongly about that. So there's an area of psychology called environmental psychology. I don't know if you heard about it. It's called environmental psychology, which is the psychology related to the environment. And one of the main names is Dr. Robert Summer. And he talks about social petal fugals and social petal places and social fugal places, like força centrífuga and força centrípeta, right? But instead of força, he talks about the social aspect of it. And he says that there are some places that instead of bringing people together, it actually pushes people away. For example, chairs in an airport. How long will you sit in an airport and talk to someone? Are they comfortable? Are they built to bring people together? No, they're there just for you to stay for 1 hour, 2 hours, and then that's it. You know what I mean? Yeah, you got what I'm saying, right? So but also there are places. They are sociopetal, which is places that can bring people together. So I'm going somewhere, I'm saying this, I'm going somewhere else now. I'm going to actually like policymakers and things like that. But I'm talking about investing also in places that are going to, promote this kind of encounters in the city, inside the city, places that people will feel so good there, they won't feel like they need their phones. Man, it's so amazing to be here hanging out with these people that I actually don't need my phone right now. So we need to really invest in that. And, he's been talking about it like for 40 years. He was really ahead of us. This guy, Robert Summer, he's a genius. But there are many strategies to deal with that. And also at the end of the day, we need to use, I think a main tool is also education. Is always actually education. It's always education. It's bring it into the classroom. We are sometimes the classroom is all about the content. Oh, I'm going to talk about math, this and this and this today. But actually, I have an opportunity to bring people together inside my classroom. I can make a circle. I can make them discuss something that is an issue that's actually facing the school. Wow, we're facing this school. What do you guys think? Oh, I think this. And then you give them voice. And then, is there rehumanization? I think we need a rehumanization approach. Rehumanization. Yeah, that's a long word.
Rehumanization approach. I love that.
Yeah.
Benjamin, it's been really great talking to you. It's great. And, such an important topic. What final advice do you have for people? And what are the best ways for them to get in touch with you? My
final advice is that everyone can play a role on bullying prevention. It doesn't matter, it doesn't matter your profession. It doesn't matter, where you work at. It doesn't matter. Everyone plays a role on bullying prevention. So my advice is think about where you are right now and think of ways that you can influence the place where you are, influence your culture towards this humanization purpose of the purpose that you're talking about, okay? And my contacts, is that right? You asked my contact? Okay.
Yeah, sure. How can people get in touch with you?
Yeah. escolasembuling.com.br. Yeah. And my Instagram is Benjamin Horta, Horta. Benjamin Horta. So you can contact us there or through our website. Yes, thank you.
Really great. Really great. Thank you so much for being with us here today, Benjamin. Really wishing you all the best. Super important topic. I really hope people get, here to this episode, listen to everything and just go after information, because as you just heard him, everyone can play a role. So it's not because something that is close to you is not going over that. But as you saw, you have many roles into that. You have the observers, the defenders, let's get into that. This is something that we can easily solve. You don't need technology for that. You just need, a will. And, we can help. We can improve. Let's dig into that, everybody. I hope this inspires people, and I hope it gives hope to the ones that need, and it gives strength to the ones that need. And let's get inspired, and let's go help each other towards a more human-centered future. Thank you so much, Benjamin, for that.
Thank you for inviting me, and congratulations for the Future Hacker work you guys doing. I saw some of the episodes, and I think it's amazing how you're gathering so much information through your work. Is really amazing, especially the one from Jonathan Cohen, which this is a good example of using technology in a good way. How this is an awesome example of doing it. So congratulations on the work. It's a really honor to be here today.
Future Hacker. Life, Path, Future.